Star Conspiracy and the content channel, Hey, Bret Star. I'm Bret Star. This is Long Strange Trip. Episode 11.
Hit it.
Tony Spangler. I am Vice President of Public Relations and Analyst Relations. It's not how I got my start here at the agency. One of the partners, Steve Smith, invited me to join the agency. He was looking for a writer, someone to do research, someone with some of my PR background. And he was trying to rope me into the Star Conspiracy, and he started explaining the clients that he worked for and the work that that the Star Conspiracy does. And I was like, what the hell are you even talking about? My background is in journalism. I spent 20 years as a reporter and decided to jump off that sinking ship, as my wife also at the time worked in newspaper. One of us had to get out. I was the first one to lower a life raft and drift off into a new career. Went into Texas politics first, worked in the Texas Senate. I kind of jokingly say that I became battle tested outside of journalism because I started communications and politics. Then got into PR, and then have been with the Star Conspiracy for the last 8 years.
8 years.
Started out, yeah.
That's crazy. Feels like yesterday.
Crazy.
As cliche as that sound, it actually does feel like yesterday. All this time has been super compressed. Well, I got to start by saying you look great. What's going on with you? You look fantastic.
I took a few weeks off of PTO. I work for this really cool employer that has unlimited paid time off. And unlike some of the prognosticators out there that claim that unlimited PTO doesn't really work, that it's a myth, I call bullshit. It works wonderfully. I finally took a real break 2 years into the pandemic just to kind of recharge myself and get healthy. And it's been fantastic. Doing all kinds of cool stuff, Bret. Eating better, sleeping better, doing yoga, exercising, stop drinking, stop eating sugar. I tried to stop coffee. That's a really bad idea. Don't ever do that.
At least not all
I
at
hear
once.
you can wean your. What's that?
At least not all at once while you're quitting all that other stuff. You got to have something. Coffee and cigarettes. Not cigarettes.
Yeah.
At least coffee. Taking your first real break since the pandemic. Did you have any time to kind of reflect on how crazy the last couple of years have been? Did you have any realizations about the pandemic? What was your thought process there, and where are you now?
But I feel like initially, as I reflected on it, I kind of recognized immediately out of the gate, like the difficulties of it. We have 3 kids. My wife was working from home. I was working from home. We're setting up working stations in, corners of the house that previously didn't have desks, and trying to keep our kids. I have twin boys. I had to keep them separated. They were like at opposite quadrants of the house, because otherwise they would have never been able to focus in school. So, just the normal challenges I think everyone recognizes in the pandemic, where, you just never turn off.
Mm-hmm.
And until the kids went back to in-person school, your days are really long. They were much longer than normal during the pandemic, just because of the constant interruptions kids need. I'm hungry,
Yeah.
my computer's not working, something. And yeah, it was reflecting on it. It was a long, brutal period. I kind of liken it to when you're a new parent, when you've got an infant in the house and they only sleep in like 2 to 3 hour increments.
Yeah.
And that goes on for a couple months and you're just exhausted. And it felt like that for quite a while into the pandemic. We did, so one of the great things we did was we went digital by default, and we decided that if you want to work remote for the rest of your life. Who cares? Like, you just, you can do your work from anywhere. The great thing about that is also there's always a another side of the coin. The other side of the coin is exactly as you described. For those of us, and I'm also early riser, probably going back to my Army days, is get up and get some work done early in the morning, and then you kind of have sporadic focus throughout the day, right? You're kind of, your context shifting between life, the pandemic, your kids, trying to get some work in, trying to find groceries, on empty shelves, weird things like that. But then you like realize that at the end of your day, after all the dust settles, that like, shit, I still have work to do, And so the part that was simultaneously the most difficult was, man, I've just like from sun up to sundown, I'm working, even though probably the number of actual hours of work that you did was the same, or shit, probably even less. It just felt like you were just always on.
It's been a while since I've kind of talked about why I'm doing this. And honestly, it's a very selfish initiative, which is I know that we did a lot of things right during the pandemic, and I know that we made a lot of mistakes as well. But, we've arrived in the year 2022. I think that's the year. And we're a radically changed, much larger, much more successful agency. And so I know that there's lessons in there around, things that we can do, not just in a crisis, but just things that make sense to do. And I know that there's a lot of lessons about things you should never do. But honestly, it all happened so quickly, and the time, is compressed in such a, surreal way that I can't even remember when we did, certain things and versus other things. And so I'm really just trying to, kind of get all the pieces together so that, we can take what we learned and, continue to apply it, not just when the next, crisis, whatever it is, pops up, but, a lot of the things that we did are the right things to do no matter what. I mean, it's like I was talking to Lance Hahn yesterday about his Work Leader Weekly newsletter. And, he's got a lot of great content in that newsletter. And one of the things that he was talking about was a recent survey by ADP that showed, just like last week, that 2/3 of Americans don't want to go back to work. They don't want to go back to the office, right? And you have a choice in that environment. You can continue to fight against, the changes that the world is experiencing, or you can learn to flow with them. And, I think that, a lot of the things that we did, like, quiet time blocks and the 3-day weekend and stuff like that, are in line with what the future of work was already becoming. But, the future of work is now. It's not like this remote concept anymore. We thought we were charting the future of work. It was a think tank exercise, and, there's going to be robots and AI and, stuff like that. And the reality is the future of work just arrived on our doorstep, in March for many of us, for March in 2020. And it's become more of an exercise of figuring out what it is rather than what it will be. And what it is, what got delivered to us, is really different, I think, than, kind of what we expected for the future of work. And in many ways, it's much more pragmatic. It's not lofty in terms of, kind of how companies need to move forward, but it's also transformational and kind of really getting to the roots of, what is the role of work in life and how do those things work together? And what are we all here for, man?
Well, I think a good corollary for what you're describing is what sometimes often the work that we do at the Star Conspiracy is helping a lot of our clients communicate how does software tools or solutions, how do they integrate into work? And one of the big problems the industry had for many years was trying to force people to adapt and accommodate the tools. And it was creating some bad experiences. And there were some people who were getting it right. There was a lot of bad software out there. And, instead what they realized was we need to be able to have flexible, adaptable technology that just kind of, moves into the flow of work, that, that it's not disruptive. There's not a management tax to technology. And in many ways, I think the corollary is that they've often had work processes for people that people have had to adapt to.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that they have weird shit going on in their lives, even pre-pandemic, maybe you're doing some elder care, maybe, you've got, daycare issues, maybe you've got commuting issues, whatever. And, work has always been, people, harumph about work because it's that difficult balance in their life between work and, outside work. And I think one of the great things that we got right was we thought about the people, like, let's take care of the people first and create a better balance. And, it sounds trite, the balance, like work-life balance, but in some ways we honestly weren't like, let's not try to figure out what the work-life balance is. Let's just give people the support that they need. Keep asking people, what do you need? And give people the support that they need and the flexibility and the ability to find time and focused time to work. And the rest of it has kind of worked itself out for the most part.
Was there a moment when you were like, holy shit, this thing is real and it's going to change everything?
I think my aha moment came pretty quick. I mean, a couple things happened. The real aha moment was when the pandemic first really gripped, was right around the time our kids went on spring break.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all healthy, so we thought, let's go visit the kids' grandparents like now. So my in-laws, we went and visited them out in East Texas. And, we stayed the week with them, and we had everything we needed. They had everything they needed. We weren't really sure what was happening. We come back. The school immediately extended spring break by a week. I said, oh, okay, something, this thing's for real. But then I went to the grocery to get some things. And man, I'm telling you, almost every single shelf was like barren. It looked like something out of the apocalypse movie, for sure. And, simultaneously that when I returned to work, we had one of our clients, a CEO from one of the software companies we work for. He was having a conversation with a CEO of a manufacturing company.
Mm-hmm.
And that CEO of the manufacturing company said, the supply chain just got interrupted. If everything returns to normal tomorrow, it's still going to take me 18 months to get back to the same level of output that we had pre whatever this is, right? I don't even think we haven't had a label for it at the time, but he basically was saying it's going to take forever to get caught back up because there's a domino effect that works backwards in the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And because every company in manufacturing, transportation, storage all works on lean principles, they only keep on hand what they need immediately for orders. So orders stop. They don't have any additional raw material or whatever it is they need to produce on hand. Their people aren't on hand. And suddenly they're going to have to wait for every single domino in that chain to catch back up. Yeah. And so it doesn't surprise me at all, 2 years into this, that we're still struggling with supply chain issues. But looking at those shelves, I thought, sure wish I would have bought that freezer and put it in my garage like last year when I thought about it.
Yeah. Well, that was, I did a lot of crazy things during the pandemic, and, I was, in the first episode, I was pretty upfront about, some things that I'm not proud of, some things that I did out of fear, like, going to the, academy and buying shotguns and stuff like that. Not my best day, but, we all did some crazy shit. But one of the things that I did in March was get a deep freeze. And I called Omaha Steaks because, they've got more of a direct model. So I figured they wouldn't be as impacted by supply chain. And it was super expensive, but I filled up that deep freeze and we ate from that deep freeze, for a year. And the reason I did all that is because we had a client who delivers lean manufacturing software. And one of their customers was one of the biggest pork producers in the country. And, I had a front row seat to what was going on in that, kind of pork production facility in terms of just getting, shut down by COVID, their supply chain being interrupted and all that stuff. And of course, the most important thing I took from that was like, go buy pork now, put it in deep freeze, But I mean, it was crazy. I had that grocery store moment too. I went to Albertsons down the street, which is not my usual grocery store. When we got back from spring break, from San Francisco in March, and I have pictures of, a line stretching out the door. There were fights inside the grocery store. People were fighting over toilet paper, all kinds of crazy stuff. Things were limited to, like 2 frozen food items per person. It was just like, I'd never experienced anything like that. Like maybe at like a gas station grocery store, like someplace where I go fishing out in the country, they might have like 1 package of like hamburger buns from 5 years ago and, dusty, like canned corn. But I never thought I'd see it like, a major metropolitan grocery store of a major chain. It was insane.
We bought toilet paper when we had the kids out visiting the grandparents on spring break. We bought a little bit of toilet paper because we heard for some reason, I don't know, that one spread pretty quickly on social media that nobody has toilet paper and everyone's making a run on it. And when we returned, I went to Costco and my wife said, do you know if we have any toilet paper in the garage? And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to get a pack. And so I went straight to it and I bought that pack of toilet paper. I laugh about it now because when I got home, I realized must have just bought one at Costco, and everyone got scared and freaked out about not having enough. We were in the opposite boat. We had too much for a long time.
Well,
we just finally, I think, worked our way through some of that. It's funny.
This is a great point about decentralization and how people are, and this is a super crass conversation. I apologize for everything that I'm about to say because it's about toilet paper. But people are trying, whether by choice or by force of circumstance, to uncouple themselves from the traditional supply chain as much as possible. That's part of decentralization. Lean, the dirty secret behind lean manufacturing is that somebody's holding the inventory. Did, these experiences that you had kind of change your outlook on life or your life plans?
I don't know about life plans. I think definitely outlook on relationships, and, I hear a lot of people talking about, the feeling of isolation or being disconnected. And I think it just my experience has been that it's made me appreciate the valuable relationships in your life, that being connected. In yoga, we sometimes call it binds, things that we're bound to, that we have sort of a reciprocal commitment to. And and on the one hand, as much craziness as there has been in the past couple of years, political polarization, cultural polarization, vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, maskers, anti-vaxxers. I think regardless of where people are in their ideologies, I do see people on both sides of various aisles feeling or sensing that the value of relationships has become more important.
Do you think that the pandemic has changed your relationship with work or how you foresee your future career?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the pandemic changed my relationship with work. I think the nature of work changed my relationship with work in some ways. What I mean by that is, we work for work tech and HR software companies, and they serve a purpose to help people, connect, be more productive, get work done more efficiently, et cetera, or, in theory, right? But it always sort of felt more on the productivity side versus the more humanistic or culture or connecting side, even though there's a lot of great solutions out there that do things like rewards and recognition and well-being. But until the pandemic hit, it never really felt that, it didn't feel to me anyway, that a lot of these solutions had this really really deep impact in people's work experience. And suddenly the clients we were working for, they became extremely relevant really quickly into the pandemic. Even for companies that maybe aren't putting employee experience first, they had to, out of,
Yeah.
it was sort of a default situation that like they had to be able to retain people, the people that they, whether they were on furlough and they wanted to come back, or whether they were working remote and they wanted them to come back, or whatever the scenario was. Suddenly, almost every CEO in the country realized, man, we've got to take care of our people, and we need to support them better. And suddenly, the work that we were doing had immense, purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and it gave us purpose. And I sort of I don't know. I always believed in what we were doing, in that a lot of our clients have a lot of great technology and have a lot of great solutions that do a lot of good. But suddenly, I felt like it had a higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the clients we were working for, the work that we're doing to try to help, improve the world of work, it felt very real instead of more esoteric, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, we're not talking about, soda fountains in the company. We're not talking about a refrigerator filled with, snacks.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about massages, we're not talking about perks. And, what's really interesting is that prior to the pandemic, some of those employee experience categories like recognition and well-being and stuff like that, everybody, both on the buying side and the selling side, worked really hard to create a business case for it. They wanted everything tied to, some number that people cared about, that was higher up the chain from just, creating a great employee experience. But maybe there was an impact on turnover. Maybe there was an impact on productivity. Maybe there was an impact on revenue. And people were twisting themselves in knots, trying to find the highest order business case they could make for what a lot of people considered, kind of discretionary benefits inside an organization. Like recognition is a discretionary benefit. And that has radically changed. All the stuff that people are doing from an employee success perspective, an employee experience perspective, and work experience no longer need to be proven in business cases, because we have viscerally and intrinsically lived it. It's like 50% turnover, in 2021 across all industries, 50%. People talk about the Great Resignation, and meanwhile, and, this is not a propaganda film, we lost 2 people in the last 3 years, and one got a dream job, and the other, went to school. And other than that, we've not had any turnover. And the primary reason for that, I would argue, is the employee experience that we've created as a group. Were you ever afraid of losing your job during the pandemic?
That's actually, this is going to sound strange. I actually was afraid I couldn't quit. We were in a strange place going into the pandemic. Just a couple months prior to the pandemic, we had a couple of our PR professionals left to take great jobs elsewhere. And at the same time, the software industry, mostly led by their venture capital companies, that were influencing their decisions to pull back on advertising and in marketing spend, which we've talked about ad nauseum, of such a poor strategy. But they were pulling back, and we were light on work for a bit on the marketing side. Well, as that was happening, they were instead shifting dollars to public relations. And I suddenly found myself, a month into the pandemic with 18 clients.
Yeah.
And, really most people should have 5, 6, heavy clients. And though, I talked about earlier sort of never being able to shut it off. And it was during that stretch. I had about a 6-month stretch, Brett, where I got about 6 months into the pandemic, and I almost just quit. And it wasn't because I don't like my job. It's not because I don't love the Star Conspiracy. We were doing great things to take care of people. I was just exhausted. I mean, I couldn't turn it off. And at the same time we were just starting to implement, our one team model to decentralize a lot of things and to allow people to opt into work and allow people, sort of people who had a full plate to, raise their hand and bring people in. That we didn't have probably enough people initially when we started that. We didn't have enough people trained in public relations. There's an art and discipline to public relations that, while a lot of people started learning public relations, we probably didn't have enough people to handle the immense workload that suddenly cropped up in the public relations practice area. And one team helped, definitely alleviated some of that pressure, that capacity, but there also comes, a little bit of, growth with that as well. People need to, learn and develop, and or we hadn't started hiring yet, so we couldn't just bring in, a seasoned professional. And it was tough, man. I was never worried about losing my job. I was worried about, am I going to get to the point where is drowning as we were in public relations work, would I have the strength to say, I can't do this, I'm quitting?
Yeah.
I know it's weird to talk that way, because I think how much loyalty I have to the agency and how committed I am to, the vision and what we're doing. But I look back on that, and it's just weird to think that my mind was there of just like wanting to just quit, not quit the agency, but just quit working.
Dude,
just stop.
I totally understand. First of all, a lot of people made sacrifices during the pandemic, and what you're describing is, it's kind of part and parcel of the direction that we moved in as an agency. It's like you can't build a sustainable business without keeping people around, the same people for as long as you can, right? And the nature of the type of, industry that we're in is such that, there's a chaotic swing, between what clients demand at any particular moment. And you can find yourself with, tons of digital work and no PR. Then you can find yourself with tons of PR and, no content. And it's just like, you never know who's going to get hit next. And on the one hand, that's something that we've needed to address for a long time. And we have over the last few years of creating a more decentralized model where people can flow to different kinds of work and, focusing on making, that work accessible in stages to people with different skill sets, so that, we never end up with, one group that is, totally every single person is over capacity and another group that doesn't have anything to do, that we still have remnants and pockets of that, based on, kind of high barrier to entry skills, and that sort of thing. But all that aside, when you think about that sacrifice, it must be acknowledged that if you had not applied all of that effort to PR when, everybody was coming to us for PR, that we probably wouldn't have made it. And, it's not just that you stepped up and shouldered that burden of responsibility that, helped so many people, but lots of people, experienced similar situations at different times. And we never had anyone falter. We all went through a lot of pain, but we didn't falter. And man, I'm with you. I mean, there were times when I just wanted to stop. I mean, it was like from 5:30 in the morning till midnight every day, dealing with, every curveball and, feeling like I couldn't quit, unless I manufacture some kind of like health crisis or something like that, which I almost did by drinking too much. Failing that, I just couldn't look at myself in the mirror and say, I'm just going to stop because there's, 40 or 50 families here that we're trying to take care of. And there was just no escaping it, there were times when I just wanted to shut down and stop. And on the one hand, I feel like I didn't have the courage to do it, and maybe it would have been beneficial for me at times to, kind of step back from the fire a little bit. But on the other hand, I think that there's just an underlying truth that couldn't be ignored, that everyone was essential, and that if we walked away from, that responsibility or that burden, that it wasn't just us that was going to, suffer consequences from that, whatever they were, but that it would have a cascading impact on lots of people. And so thank you for doing that. And, I just want you to know I feel the same way. So it doesn't surprise or bother me that, you would contemplate what it would have been like, or, what it would be like back then to just walk away. And so many people did that.
I'm glad I didn't.
Me too. Jeez.
I'm glad I didn't. No, it worked out great. We took care of people. Don't be hard on yourself. I mean, in fact, you should, you and the senior leadership team did a fantastic job of recognizing in the moment. We were kind of rallied. The strength of our agency is often in our resilience, in our ability to figure out the right thing to do.
Well, we did a lot of things wrong too. Can you point to anything that you think was like the biggest mistake, or just
I think that the one team model is, with all the positive things that came out of one team model in terms of allowing people to opt into work, to allow, to create more balance and capacity, so that one person's not shouldering too much. At the same time, one of the things that we did was, initially anyway, we said, okay, let's have all our account management team, let's have them start doing more billable work, mm-hmm. and having them opt into work. And while we stopped bean counting and talking about numbers around billable hours, there was an expectation that, that accounts were suddenly going to start, delivering on, assets and billable mm-hmm. work, that has like outputs to it. And I think for a short while, we learned a lesson really quickly, is that some of that account management, the managing relationships with clients, is such a valuable skill. And, the weird thing was, we did like, it was almost like picking a dodgeball team. We did like a draft or something like that of clients. And it was weird because I saw some pain for some people of having to let go of some clients. Like we decided you can't have too many clients. You can only be account manager on so many accounts. And I think that it created some fear, uncertainty, and doubt for our account team. And because, they bring a certain skill set, that's what they know. Mm-hmm. Kudos to many of them who were like, let me stretch and grow. Let me learn some new things. And they did. And it's great. Because they have a deeper understanding of the work that we do now. But I don't know if it was the best use of the account management resources. And then we had some people like myself and some others who were doing account management work that probably just needed to stay in our own lane of expertise.
Well, Tony, I appreciate the conversation. It was good catching up. Thanks for sharing your experiences through the pandemic. I know that a lot of people don't like to go back there. So thank you. And I know that people will see themselves in this conversation as well. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I can't remember if it was, I got an email from Grace. It was somebody I didn't know, had never seen their email address before.
Yeah.
And in the in the subject line and the sender came up, and it just looked like an outside source. And my first instinct as a PR guy, I do a lot of PR for our own agency.
Yeah.
First thing I did was like, hey, send me some audience numbers. Like, do you know if we have any toilet paper in the garage? And I said, I don't know, but I'm gonna get a pack. I went back to that section where they keep, paper towels, toilet paper, that kind of stuff, all the way in the back of the store. And there was one pallet left of toilet paper, and like, we're three packs. And I grabbed one of the 3 packs. But what I noticed walking through the store is almost every shopper had a pack of toilet paper in their cart.
But it's crazy that, on the one hand, it's crazy that people's first instinct was to hoard toilet paper. On the other hand, it basically has changed people's relationship with toilet paper. It's like, have you seen the numbers on bidet sales? Like those bidets that you can just like attach to your toilet?
There were some more people talking about damn bidets after this thing broke out. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And it's like, that's
a little
just
bit annoying.
It's super annoying. It's like when somebody falls in love with their bidet and they're just like talking about like how they'll wait to go to the bathroom just to get home so they can use their bidet. It's like, okay.
Teach you everything I know.
You tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
I've been having a hard time with my mask during coronavirus, so I figured out a trick.